All right, so good evening, everyone. I think we should start now without wasting much time. I hope our day has been wonderful. Mr. Iberi, how are you doing today? Hello, Mr. Iberi, are you there? Hello, Mr. Iberi, are you there? Hello, Mr. Iberi, can you hear me? Hello, can every other person hear me? All right, so good evening. So today we want to look at project cost management. Project cost management. All right. Now, this is the aspect that has to do with money. All right. So the summary of project cost management is the aspect we talk about the budget. Is the aspect where we talk about how we come about the money or the expenses that we need to make for the project. How do we arrive at those estimations as regard the cost? How do we value all our resources? So every aspect of the project that have to do with money, this is the aspects in our project where we discuss and finalize on it. So project cost management is actually the aspect in the project's journey that actually talk more about estimating, budgeting, and controlling the cost for the project. So, knowing how much it may cost us to complete the project, it is under project cost management we discuss that. So, in summary, project cost management helps us or talks about the costing of our project. So that is why we can easily say that project or cost management refers to the process of estimating, because you're going to find out, oh, how much is it going to cost us to complete each of those activities that we decompose from a work package. All right. So you can see the importance of WBS. So which means if you don't have a good WBS, then it becomes very difficult for you to even decompose your work package. And if there is no proper decomposition of your work package to an activity, how then can you cost it? How then can you schedule it? You saw we discussed schedule yesterday. How then can you now even talk about the amount of resources you need? Like when we were discussing yesterday, looking at clearing of land as an activity under foundation. Like now, that clearing of land, if you now break it down, you discover that there are several other little tasks that needs to be done when it comes to clearing of land. So that WBS or the breaking down of such enable you to cost it. Now, if we want to clear the land, we want to excavate, we want to do several things, how much will it cost you to get the excavators? Or how much will it cost you to bring the abokis to come and clear the land? How much will it cost you to do other things you need to do on the land? All right. Oh, you need to also test the soil. How much will it cost you to test the soil? So all these are the reason why we mentioned earlier that when you are able to perform WBS for your project, you have solved more than 60% of all the problems that you as a project manager will encounter in your project. I'm actually saying that because of real life projects. I'm not saying that because of the exam, but that information is because when you are handling a personal project as a project manager, please, I told you, follow and create a WBS. And there are some basic things I mentioned in our former class. I talked about the project life cycle. It is your core. I talked about creating WBS. It is your core. And I also mentioned that in each of those life cycle, the easiest way to get it done is to follow the 5 process rule. That you see that managing project from on the real world will become easy for you. All right. So I'm not saying that because of the exam, but I'm saying that because of managing personal projects that you may get the opportunity to manage. All right. So that being said, what do we need to do to be able to manage project costs? And what are the project management activities? You can see on the screen the project management activities. We have to plan cost, we have to estimate cost, we have to determine budget, and we have to control cost. But please, I want you to also note somewhere that you cannot have a total cost or a complete cost or a complete budget without factoring in your risk analysis. So without any risk analysis, your cost is not completed. So without any risk analysis, your cost is not completed. So the risk analysis is a very important aspect of your cost management. So which means, I repeat, you can't have a proper or a complete or a total budget without your what? Risk analysis. That I will explain later in this class. All right, just note that somewhere. Then also, I would also like you to note that when you talk about costing in your project, you must at all points bear in mind what we refer to as life cycle costing. Life cycle costing. What is the meaning of life cycle costing? Just as it sounds, it we say life cycle, oh, from the beginning of the project to the end. No, that is not just all we mean. But when we talk about life cycle costing, write it down. This is the concept that involves looking at cost over the entire life of the product. This concept involves looking at the cost over the entire life of the product. So which means, note, don't not just the cost of the project to create the product, not just the cost of the project to create the product, but also the cost of maintenance. We refer to that as what? Life cycle costing. Example now, like I told you guys, working on a payment application, all right, my costing for that payment application will not just be based on the amount alone that it will cost us to complete the payment application, but rather additional cost is added to take care of maintenance, which in some organizations we refer to as support. Right, so those costs that you put in place to take care of maintenance, to take care of feedback, to take care of maybe some failed test, take care of some errors that may occur in the process of time, you refer to it as what? Life cycle costing. All right, so that being said, we have four major project management process to follow to be able to determine the project cost. And we said the first one is to plan cost management. Like I often mention, planning cost management is more like saying that, oh, let's come together as a team. Let's come and develop the processes that we need to follow. Let's develop the policies that will guide us. Let's develop the procedures. Let's put all this information together in a paper, and that will help us in our expenditure, that will help us in our managing, and that will help us in our controlling. So all those informations you put together as result to the fact that you want to develop a policy to guide, you want to put a procedure to lead, you want to put all these informations together so that it can guide everyone that may come thereafter to the team to be able to manage the cost for the project. And that is why the output of this process is to have the cost management plan. And that cost management plan automatically provide guidance and direction on how the project cost will be managed throughout the project. That is exactly what we want to achieve. The project, the cost management plan. And the techniques that can be used to achieve it, expert judgment. Or you can have a meeting, just like I said. You bring your team together, everybody sit down together, develop the policies. And now when we talk about policies, we're talking about, oh, maybe you want to release fund phase by phase. Oh, or maybe part of the policy, is that you don't want a situation whereby um, um, I remember just, yes, you don't want, let's say for instance, you have hierarchy in your team. You want to put some um, fund release limit. Oh, there's the amount of fund a supervisor A can withdraw. There's the amount of fund supervisor B can withdraw. There's the amount of fund the project manager can withdraw. All those little policies and procedures. Oh, if you want to seek approval for so fund for so kind of thing, this is how you go. You must send a memo. You must send this. You must send that. You understand now? So all these are the policies or procedures that will be documented during this season of having or discussing about the project cost management. All right. So what we want to achieve is that particular document. Please, is that clear? Hello, is that clear, please? All right. So that is why, and also part of the policies. All right. You discover that, for instance, now in Nigeria setting, all right, when they are calling cost for, like now you listen to House of Assembly, when you see they are mentioning the cost of a project, you see they will narrow it down to kobo and so and so and so kobo and so. Why? Because that is also part of the policies, that, oh, this is the level of our precision when it comes to what our costing for the project. All right. So we will talk about some other things as it relates to costing in our project. But basically, just like I mentioned, that in a practical term or in a practical environment, you are asking yourself, okay, how do I plan for my cost for this particular project? I told you that when you are planning for cost, just like as I mentioned, when you are planning for cost, hope you cannot see my screen, please. When you are planning for cost, like as I mentioned, I told you that every other thing, just like as you have estimate cost, determine budget, control cost, these three things are the basic, or let me say the practical thing you should do. The practical thing that you should do to be able to plan for cost in your project. All right, these are the practical things you will do to be able to plan for your cost in a project. So now, let's look at the first one, which is estimate cost. What do we mean to estimate cost? What are we actually looking at when we want to talk about estimation of our cost? It is the process, please, you can also note it down. All right. Apart from the definition we have on the screen, you can also note it down that estimate cost, this is the process that involves coming up with cost estimate for each activities. Take note, that is the key, for each activity. Coming up with cost estimate for each activity. All right. So all these estimates will be ultimately combined together, that will now form the project cost. Okay, but we have also found in some projects where some costs are disbursed phase by phase. But the most important thing is that there is what? An estimate. So cost estimate is practically coming up with the approximations, the monetary value of each of those activities. That is what the project cost estimate. Or some people can put it in a more layman way, calculating the amount it will cost you to complete each of those activities. The amount it will cost monetarily to complete each of those activities. All right. So when by the time you put all of them together, it becomes project cost. Hello, did you hear that? I repeat, estimate cost is calculating the amount it will take to complete each of those activities. That is estimate cost. But by the time you put the summation of all those together, it becomes what? Your project cost. Take note of that word, project cost. Which means the project cost automatically becomes the amount of money to take you to complete your project. Take note of that statement. All right, we'll make reference to it later as we move on in the class. Now, let's now look at some different category of costs. Before we let's look at the different category of costs. We have direct cost and indirect cost. We have variable cost and fixed cost. Now, let me hear from you a practical example of a direct cost and indirect cost, variable cost and fixed cost. So, Mr. Iberi, let me hear from you. What will you say is the difference between direct cost and indirect cost in a project? Please just use your understanding. Forget about this plenty grammar we have on the screen. Hello, Mr. Iberi, are you there? Hello, Mr. Iberi, are you there? All right, okay. Let's move on. Lola, what about you? Yes, from experience, what will you say is direct cost, the difference between direct cost and indirect cost? Hello, Lola, are you there? All right. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So what will you now say is the difference between variable cost and fixed cost? Okay, that is another side to it. That's another side to it. Okay. All right, that's another side to it. Then for okay, let's hear from another person. Then we'll not know if we are all correct. Yes. Mr. Wale. Hello, Wale. Are you there? Yes. Direct cost and indirect cost. What will you have to say about that? No, no, don't copy my explanation on the screen. Okay. Okay. So what about variable cost and fixed cost? Okay. All right. Godwin, can we hear from your end?